Wait a minute.
Meeting to order at 6:06. I'd ask if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. First order of business, the minutes of February 6, 2019. What is the wish of the board?
Movement is written.
Second.
Any corrections or changes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes as written?
Aye.
Public comments. As there's no public, there are no public comments. Agenda review. Is there anything anybody would like to change? Nate?
I have some information on various high school items. I don't know where they would fit, whether they want to save them for informational at the end, or...
They could go, informational's probably fine. I would also like to add a discussion around two things. One is a audit for LED lights, and one is a maintenance plan for the website. You want me to put those on informational too, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
Do you have anything? Or?
We have 4 consent items now.
Okay. Anything else? All right. First up, board goals review.
Do you want to do the consent?
Oh, excuse me, consent items. Excuse me. Yes, consent items.
We could take requests for unpaid leave first.
Okay.
I would move.
All of these unpaid leave?
No.
Just the first one?
The
The
actually, there
first
are
one
2.
is the.
And I think that there are 2. Oh, there's 3. 3 of them are unpaid leave. And 1 is child-bearing leave.
Alright, so any questions on the unpaid leave?
All 3 of them, you mean? Or the first one?
Why don't we deal with all 3 of the unpaid leave together?
And if you want to have discussion, we should do that in non-public, and then, unless it's a general.
If anybody has specific questions, we can move it for non-public.
I would move. If there's no questions, though.
Is the my general question, is the administration comfortable with these requests? Or is that something we should discuss in
I think we are.
There was one more too.
Okay. Is it one of the 3 that were?
looking at?
Nope. Okay.
Well, I'll move to approve the 3 requests.
Second.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright, and then the 4th request is for maternity leave, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody move that?
I will move. We approve the request.
Second. I just have the same question, which is the administration on board with this?
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Takes care of our consent items. Board goal reviews. Is there a copy of the board goals in here?
Yes, behind the consent items.
So this is something that we wanted to touch on our last meeting. It's so strange, it's been a full 4 weeks since our last meeting. As part of the continuing review of where we are as a board and once the budget season dies down, it's nice to touch base in regards to what our goals are and how we are working towards them. So we want to just kind of touch on the curriculum competency-based education was our first goal. We had a couple of programs that we were interested in hearing about. I think we had a discussion on that at our last meeting, and we will have a continued discussion on that this meeting. And I believe Nelm's study is on the agenda tonight, so there'll be an update on that as well. Okay. Is there anything any board members wanted to talk about under the first one, curriculum competency at this point?
I guess one thing maybe, and maybe we can reset our goals, but I think we really need to look at these not as the school board's goals, and possibly just talk more about these are the school's goals, right?
Right.
And so, whether it's when we're crafting them going into next year, I think we need to change the way we look at this, and they're not our goals, they're the school's goals.
But that's something common, and we worked on that in the past. I thought the same thing when I read it, that it's hard to craft a goal that you're in charge of, that where your goals and how can you accomplish them, versus it's something you're expecting.
Right.
The administration.
So I think that's real high level, I guess, thought.
But then on that topic, I think then the process then needs to be discussed. I mean, in other districts, when you go through some sort of a strategic planning process that incorporates input and ideas and priorities from the community, from the faculty, from the board, from all these stakeholders, and then somehow combines it all into one master plan.
Yeah, I think.
So I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't want to top down say these are your goals without their input.
I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but what I'm thinking we need to, that these to be included, it really is the school's goals, it's the district's goals, it's not the board's goals.
Okay.
So perhaps when we come around to them again, later this year, we look at a different system in terms of collaboration for input on the goals.
Yeah.
Rather than it's just strictly the board, we incorporate a lot of what the administration has in terms of thoughts, and we give some guidance and try to put it all together in one document where it creates a guideline from us and then the directives from the administration, and we go from there. Does that make sense?
Compared to how other districts do it? Do other districts have, other districts have school board goals?
Yeah, I can only speak for Pembroke, my other board. We tackled that same issue, and the board decided to change the way that they did goals, and they removed any goal that talked about something that was being done in the school by the administration, and they tried to do, not that they don't have input into what's going on in the school, but when they address their goals, it's more like the facilities things, and forming committees, and working on safety and what their responsibilities will be, and then that trickle down, like you said, like big picture stuff.
So they refocused on just what they could control instead of. I think your point is extremely valid in changing how we get input from the public, and changing that piece of it to make that strategic plan and get the input from other sources. But I see where they're going, which also addresses what Zach brought up, is refocusing to actually create district goals that we have direct control over.
However, I think as you speak with different school boards in different districts around the state, one of the responsibilities of a school board is to set the vision, is to set the direction. So,
which we've talked about before.
Yeah. So if you're saying, I think maybe you're saying that we have no input onto what's happening in the school, then how are we fulfilling our responsibility of setting the vision for the school? We represent the community in doing this.
Right.
So how do you balance that?
It's not that I don't think we should have input in the school.
Okay.
It's just that I think part of this process is basically creating another process to help facilitate the interaction between the public, to create that vision. What does that vision look like? And this is something that we struggled with for a while, is how do we get that input from outside to what we want or what the school should be, to have that strategic plan, not only to create the vision, but also create the strategic plan to make that vision possible, or to realize that vision.
And there could be a very, we may be very well looking at, there's certain things the school board accomplishes. Like we need to increase physical planning, we need to do certain things. That's really stuff that is as much on us to tackle as it is anybody else. But then there's the things, as we dive deeper and deeper into competency education and all this stuff, that's the board's goal might be, one aspect of it, but it's the school that has to really, we need to get buy-in, and we need to get, it's the school that makes that happen, right? We can say we want competencies and this and that. It doesn't happen if it's not universally worked on.
So to that end, 4C says we would like for the school to create a 3-year plan.
Right.
Are you saying that that's fair, and that should, I mean, not fair is my word, but is that appropriate for us to say? We're not saying what the plan should be. We're just saying that we need to know what's going. We need to know what the plan is to create some sort of to reach some sort of a decision.
I mean, this.
So is that okay?
We're going to end up diving down the rabbit hole on this one, and I don't know if that was fully.
We can take a couple of minutes with the rabbit, but we can't take them.
No, and so. And I wasn't necessarily trying to jump into the rabbit hole, but I'm just trying to start that. I think it's something we need to.
So if I can kind of summarize kind of what I'm hearing is that the vision, some of the vision and direction comes from the board level. The actual
Boots on the ground.
You guys are the ones who implement and understand the day-to-day and deal with the actual tangibles. But something like where we have 4C, under long-term planning, using NOMS results, create a 3-year plan for competency-based education at the middle school level. That's more like an assignment from us for the administration.
It's worded like you're going to do that. It's
Which we are not going to do.
I can assure you, we.
So
it's an expectation, but it's not. You're not physically doing it.
No, so I mean, maybe that's the kind of thing like where there's something like that where it would maybe be better to just say by May or by June, can we see a report from you guys that would address using the NOMS results a 3-year recommended plan. I mean, is that for me? That's what the sense of that should be.
I agree. I mean, it's just I want to, and I think this. I guess what I was going to say before, this ties back to, we're working with competencies and we're working with differentiated learning, but how are we doing it, and how is DCS doing it? And are we taking what we've always done and putting competency grading on top of it? And is that what competency education is at DCS? Are we doing it consistently from K through 8? Is it being integrated one way in lower grades and a different way in higher grades? Or, is there breaks in that consistency of how we're doing it? And so, competency education is this huge kind of gray area, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in its purest form, it's brilliant, right? I mean, but we have to make it work within the box that we have, and that is the struggle. And I think what I've seen from my perspective is how are we putting that? How are we integrating that fully into our thing? I don't. I want to understand better how are we making competency, and how are we what's it look like here?
But which we are you saying? Now you're saying we as in them.
I guess
we're the school board.
I guess
that's not we.
I guess my we is
the friendly we.
It's the royal we. It's the royal we. No, I guess we collectively, the board is, we're supporting competency-based education. How's it being integrated?
So perhaps, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
I was just gonna say, I agree with Nate. What role does the board play in that? Do we oversee, are we overseeing and coordinating the efforts to get this all done? Are we the ones that are coordinating the vision, saying, okay, this is the vision we're gonna get here, let's figure out what happens between now and then, and helping them implement all of those pieces. So that's where I think our challenge is going to be, is separating the role out of what school board stuff is, what's the school board's role in this stuff, what's the school's role.
I mean, it's getting to that. It's getting to that, that endpoint, making sure we all agree that endpoint is where we want to be. And to me, we need to make sure we provide the resources that we can provide. And if those resources, whatever that may be. So if the Royal We says, this is when we set those goals for the school, this is where we want to get to. And then in my mind, our responsibility is to make sure that the resources are there so that there can be a clear path to get there.
So if I can, I think the structure needs to be clarified in terms of there are things that happen in the school, and you guys are responsible for what happens in the school. We aren't. Well, most of us aren't professional educators. Maybe for the goals next year, because we seem to be talking more in future goals, it would be useful if the administration came with, here's where we would like to go next year, and that came to the meeting where we were going to decide our goals and say, okay, well, here's things that the board can deal with around that, and we have some questions about where you're headed, and can you clarify what this means and how this is going to happen, and perhaps we should have more of a reporting function within our goals. So things like the NELMS doing a plan, you guys would have, we'd like to see that by spring. Things like the 5th grade flexible grouping model, we'd like to hear results back at a set amount of time where you're reporting back to us on the things that you present to us, and we have some higher level and other larger projects like the physical structure and
budget and policy and all those things.
All of those things, those are the tangible things that we bite into.
Right.
So
You brought up, and I think you were speaking as a parent there for a second, that you want to hear more about what's actually happening in our classrooms when it comes to competency-based education. And I think that's an important piece where we also have represented. We want to maybe having more parent forums where there's a clear opportunity for the administration or teachers to tell the community what's happening, because you have a great question that's shared by a lot of parents in the community.
Yeah.
And so here we are, we're voicing, that's our role as representing the community here. And I think that's not a bad place. I think it should be in our goals.
No, and I'm not saying that maybe there isn't two things running side by side, but I think the board's goals, we've never put the school's goal. We've never had the school's goals. We've said, okay,
there are school goals, I imagine.
Right.
We don't see those.
No, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and the support mechanisms that you need as administration and staff from us, we work to provide those to you. So if it's resources, whatever those are, that's the buck stops with us making sure that we do everything we can to get the resources you need, whether it's thing A, thing B, thing C. But I mean, it's money, and policy is basically what we have to really. That's
yeah. I think real quick, Jen. I think to your point, we need to set the school goals and then base our goals.
Or work collaboratively.
Yeah.
Work collaboratively to say this is what we can get done to reach those common goals.
collectively have a map on how we're going to get there, and then execute it.
So that's the plan going forward. Let's take a quick review
Yes.
of where we are currently.
Sorry about the rabbit hole.
That's okay. We are back out. So I talked a little bit about on 4C, we jumped a little bit, creating a plan. Do you want to start back at the top?
Well, I just have a question about 1A, actually. It says determine current status of differentiation at DCS by collecting data. Isn't that data?
We have not seen that.
We have not seen it.
So the number, Roman numeral 1 underneath 1A is monitoring the new math program, and that I think is in March. Heidi will be coming to bring that.
Right.
So you saw kind of the beginning, and now she's coming back in the spring, so you'll get that soon.
So that's a March. Next 2 weeks thing, maybe?
I think the 20th, right?
Yeah,
Next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting. Okay.
Okay. And then
We can cross 2 off because
that's on hold.
Yep.
Identify current state of learner-centered classroom and middle school level, number of opportunities in a typical trimester for a student to direct his or her online. That's also kind of another report. We would need somebody from the staff to come back and say how that's going. So if you want to lead that, and maybe in April, give us an idea. Is that realistic?
Sure.
Okay. Use results of NELM study to make reasonable near-term adjustments. You've been talking to us about that. So I think there might be more tonight. Maybe?
More or less the workshops that people are going to be going to and that plan for that.
Okay. Find a way to provide consistent and effective after-school academic support for middle school students. There hasn't been a huge expansion of the after-school program.
well, and that's academic support as well.
Right. I think if the teacher's contract passes,
It's contract dependent to a certain extent.
right, but it could tangibly, the after-school program does have budget for a tutor to be available. So
I think individual teachers do make themselves available.
They do.
But
I think we were talking about acknowledging that happened, but encouraging the additional use of the after-school program to pay somebody to provide that. School board, increase contact with Concord School Board, 10 more meetings to increase awareness of high school level concerns. It's a little bit out of order, but Nate and I went on Monday to the Concord School Board meeting and had a very nice conversation with them. So we can talk a little bit more about that later in the meeting.
Yep.
School to community, maintain parent forums. Consider giving a series to parents to view when it is convenient. So we have not done any parent forums this year.
Right. In previous years we've done a few, but not so many this year, I don't think.
We've had some information on these.
Maybe there should be a little bit of, I don't think it necessarily should be driven out of our group. Are there topics that the administration, maybe at the next meeting, have a couple of ideas? Okay. If you have them now, throw them.
well, there's some talk about social media, doing something with parents about. We had a recent incident where kids were using an app that parents had no idea about. So things like that I think are important. Maybe inviting the police chief over here or somebody that might, in the Deerfield Police Department, that might have some knowledge about things like that. I mean, there's always vaping, and that's a big topic that a lot of people don't know a lot about, or they have very little knowledge about. And it's happening in our world. You know, we have to let parents know that you can't turn a blind eye to it. So, I know that there's going to be an applicant coming up that's, they were thinking about doing a follow-up to the fall math information that they have. That they have, they'll be one of those hopefully later in the spring. That's different than the family math night, which is when the kids come for the games. So that's coming up pretty soon. And, so
Okay.
I will have.
I don't think we're gonna pull the trigger on anything tonight, so
Nope.
maybe by next meeting we can
Got
kind of
it.
talk around that.
How about it, Almar user?
Good idea.
Systems users, yeah.
We're talking about actually doing that at the barbecue, the open house, that night instead of.
That's gonna be an all-day event.
I know, right, by the time we're done.
It's gonna be a Saturday to Sunday.
Maybe like a
But have,
college orientation.
especially, right,
We're gonna have a
especially
bouncy lessons.
for the middle school, have it focus more on how can parents access this information.
Oh, good. I think D2 is done.
Okay. Yeah, support creation and refinement of a new website. I put a check mark next to that.
And I think D3 is working pretty well.
Continuation of improved communication across social media. Check that one off. But that one is never checked off. There's always better communication. Consistency and timeliness of scores and Alma. I think this was more reflective of MMA from last year and how delayed things were in MMA. I think MMS, sorry.
MMA is something else.
It felt like the MMA.
Yeah.
Has that gotten? I know that there was a learning curve, and I know that Brooke is here tonight as well. So has that closed the gap in terms of the teachers getting things in on time?
Oh, I think so.
Well, we're predicating other programs on that as well, or other initiatives. So the academic probation, thank you, is triggered off that. So I mean, you can't properly administer that program, and what I'm understanding, that's working really well, and it's working the way it's supposed to. So I presume the backline of that is even data is inputted when it's supposed to be inputted, and feedback seems to be that that's working.
Do you feel like when the early this year, I can't even remember when it happened, but when the teachers came and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to commit to having those grades in
A certain time, noon on Tuesdays.
by a certain time," do you think that for a while there was some question about whether or not they were complying with that? Do you feel like that there's decent compliance with that?
I think so. There's a few that we have to keep on, but or something happened and we couldn't get the grades in on time. But for the most part, the harder part is having people is the academic probation, following up on that, making sure that they check the kids on missings and that type of thing. It just gets away from people. So don't worry, Brian's on it. He takes care of that.
Yes, it does.
Physical plants. Use results of 2017-18 engineering and demographic study to coordinate long-term CIP. This is happening. We're working on that. They are going to be at the next board meeting. I asked them. They wanted to come tonight, and I said, we have enough stuff coming.
We had a question mark next to one of the items on the CIP was a cost for potentially adding solar.
Right.
And I have spoken to somebody, and I'm going to get them a little bit more information. And for the sake of a number to plug into the CIP, he sounds like he'll be able to produce that for us.
I can forward you the email for the dudes who are doing this, the Southern New Hampshire guy who's doing the CIP, and we can coordinate.
Yeah, I'm hoping that by the time the next meeting rolls around, I have a big number from them to plug into the CIP, and then we can work on refining it over time.
Okay. Identify the projected space needs of the school district for upcoming years, given the population projections made available in the demographic study. Ken and Leslie did a great job putting that together. They have given us a lot more clarity in terms of where we are going.
Yeah, that is also something that I want to continue to maintain and tweak as we go along, so that we can get more accurate numbers and continue.
Sure.
I think that's important to be done, so we always have an idea.
Should we be, we've seen that, we know what we're trying to, at what point do we start talking about what the next step in that process is? If is the next step making it work with what we have, or is the next, we have to have that
Next step
conversation?
would be a tangible space study in terms of, like, can we do it within what we already have? And we've heard from the administration we can't. So that we are space challenged in a big way.
And so that is
engineering
most
study might be the next thing that we start talking about.
Well, that most certainly is on us, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
So for us as a board, we need to set our own timelines on how we want to address the next step in that process.
But in a similar way to what the discussion we were just having about the strategic plan or something, I think that if we decide what the new building looks like, then we're not, I mean, it needs to be an informed decision, obviously, which means we need to have input from administration, faculty, how they would ideally use it, which is then impacted by how education in this building is looking in the next year or two. So it's all tied together, but it comes back to, I think, this idea about what are we envisioning education to look like here, because the space is going to have to either be really flexible because we don't know really what it's going to be, or if we think it's this and we build this with these rooms and it's wrong, then that's a bad situation. So it's...
Maybe that's the next phase of the Space Needs Committee, is that it continues in that vein of
you see
bringing people
school
together and talking about what kind of space would be needed and maybe have.
Well, I think to go back to your point about vision is one of the first recommendations we made when we on that report was we need to decide what the district is going to look like in the future. Are we going to continue to be a K through 8 school, or are we going to separate somehow
Elementary school, middle school.
elementary and middle school, and what would be best? What are the benefits and detractors? So I think that would be the next step as far as that goes. But I also think it would be important. I think we can do it in parallel. Is to go through the engineering study that we had commissioned, get the information to determine what else do we need to figure out what we have to work with here. So if we decide to split and go to 2 different buildings, we need to know, do we have the ability to do it here, or
Which building is which?
yeah,
Right.
right, so I just think those are the next steps.
So we're definitely still continuing the conversation.
Yeah.
But Zach's initial question was, when are we going to take the next step?
Yeah.
So if we're going to have that discussion, is that at our next meeting or the meeting after that?
Why don't we put the Space Needs Committee going forward on the agenda for the next meeting and define exactly what it's going to be?
Because I bet the number of kids in September is not going to be smaller than it is now. So
I would imagine
we need to get on this.
So could you add that to the agenda for next week?
However, wouldn't it be nice if it was?
Prepare and review a draft of the CIP. We're working on that. Continue to discuss high school options. We're going to continue to do that. And then we've already talked about it. So, anything else? We're beating the goals pretty well. And
I think actually at this point in the year we're doing better than
we always do okay.
we're doing good.
All right. So board goals review. Board reports. PTO updates.
We hosted our candidates night. I think it was a pretty good turnout. I like having it in the cafeteria, but I just felt like it was more room for everybody. We are going to finish up our Square One art fundraiser, which is one that we do with the art department. We're going to finish that on the 25th of March. We are working on our community event, the Move Into May. And we have a lot to do on it. We're going to figure out, we're going to have on Sunday, May 5th, and it's going to be held at the fairgrounds. Different activities for everyone to do. Kelly from Wolf Creek Stables approached the PTO, and she would like to host another community event at her house, at her stables, and all the money that is raised, she's just going to give to us, so couldn't say no to that. Plus, it sounds pretty fun. There'll be riding lessons, grooming lessons, food, and stuff like that for families to go to. That is also going to be on the weekend, June 9th, from 12 to 3. Tina, I, Sue, and Carolyn counted change all day from the change collected from for the leukemia penny drive. We still have more money Trish LaFawn was hiding, so we're not quite done. Just when we thought we were done. As a PTO, a whole group, we decided to go to a PTO expo in Massachusetts on April 30th. Got quite a few of us going to that. That should be fun for us. Still working on the triathlon. We've got a lot going on that. Our next meeting will be March 12th at the Lady Ryan. Our next meeting, which is March 19th, we're going to plan our Grandparents' Day, which is April 19th, and work on Teacher Appreciation Week, which will be May 6th through May 10th. That's all I got.
Thank you. Any questions for the PTO? All right. Staff report. Brooke.
Hello everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Brooke Petroselli. I'm the tech coordinator. So I'm going to be evaluating a piece of software for the last month and a half, and we is Bob and myself, and then a handful of teachers, and it's been really beneficial on both counts. So with the kids and with Bob and myself. So first, I want to show you what the problem that we were trying to solve is. So the old model, pretty much in the tech lab or when we had desktops, was all the monitors were turned toward a central location so a teacher could actually see what was going on. It was great for the time, but now we've moved on to this one-to-one system. And while that gives us a great deal more educational value, it's very hard to do classroom management in this. So what we've been asking teachers to do, you can't see what that is, it's my wizard. So we're asking teachers to do all sorts of things in addition to their actual instruction. So they have to be everywhere at once, they have to work with groups, they have to work with individuals, have an eye on all the computers, and make sure students are on task, help students that are stuck. And this is very difficult for our teachers to do. Kids are in the corners, they're on the floor, they're on their tables, they're in groups, so the computer monitors are everywhere. And some students are great, they keep right on doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they are kids, they're the digital natives, and they go everywhere. So what do? We've tried this Go Guardian, which has really been, it's fabulous. And so what a teacher can do really quickly, on a desktop, on a Chromebook, they can see all the screens at the same time. They can see the browsing history, the tabs that are open. They can limit websites for an assessment, or if they just, for the littler kids, it's great to have just a few websites for them to be able to access. You can have a student-to-teacher chat with just the two of them. And then a teacher can also redirect a student who's off task really easily. And what it looks like is like this. So they see all the kids, what they're working on, and these are all the tabs that are open with any kid that's going on. So you can really get what's like that, and you can see what's happening. And it's really easy, but it's very effective. But not only is it good for them, it's good for Bob and I. We can see all the top things that are being used. We can see our subscribed software, see if it's being used the right way. We can block inappropriate sites super fast. There's an alert feature that flags certain websites, and I can go through those and see if they really should be flagged. YouTube, fabulous resource, but has bad comments on some of the fabulous places, so we can block that, just the comments. It really helps the kids build smart, practical habits when they're supposed to be working on something and not going, surfing YouTube while they're in the class. There's a penalty box. If a kid is just not able to follow the rules, we can put one child in one penalty box. It's not the child, actually. We don't do that. But it will allow us to just control the websites that they go to, and it's allowed websites that we have already set up. So some of our math places and Google Docs, that kind of thing. And then there's an anti-theft for Chromebooks that we can track Chromebooks that have gone missing. So that's kind of a key feature for us. And then what we can see, this is just a fast screenshot. We can, as we're perusing right through, we can see, this is what's going on, we can see what's trending, we can see our summary, we can see our flag sites. This graph was over a weekend, so you can see that Friday was up, and then the weekend wasn't too much traffic. And it's really, really helpful for us to see all that's going on. Of course, the most important thing is to keep our kids safe. And bringing any new software into the building, we want to make sure that we have a really good, top-notch software. I'm going to do this backwards. They use a military-grade encryption, so that's one of our first levels of making sure that the information is secure. They, federal, FERPA, COPA, and all of our new data privacy things that were coming down, they're right on top of that game. But then the teachers only have access to the kids when they're actually in their classroom. So if a kid is at lunchtime, the teacher doesn't have access to that. The kids can go to an appropriate site if they need to. So I feel very confident about the safety and privacy that the students get from this. We let the day go from 7:45 to 4. After that, they all shut down. So it works out really nicely.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
The chat sessions between teacher and student are logged.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about that?
Yeah,
the transcripts actually logged?
Yep, the transcripts are logged. If we ever needed to go to them, we can access them. It's not something that there's a report on unless we actually need it. So, you never know when you need it, but it's there for us if we do.
So, one other question.
Yeah.
How do you define a session? Is it 7:45 to 4?
No,
or
a
is it,
session is exactly when the kids are in with that teacher.
so you guys define the class
Yeah.
times?
Yeah, actually, the teacher goes in and says, language arts is from this period to this period of these kids. And then they fill it with a Google Classroom.
Okay.
So it's super easy for them to set up, but it's also nice for the kids to know that they're being monitored during that session.
Okay.
And when they get on, they actually get a little message that says you're in your teacher session now. And I think I did that next page. So these are just kind of some of my notes that I have of it. I've talked to a lot of the kids about it so far. If we go with this, they'll get a lot more information about what Go Guardian is, what it's supposed to do. During class breaks, they're allowed to go to appropriate websites. I'm not going to take that away. One thing, if I block a site for some reason and a kid wants to come to me and say, no, we need this, I'm completely open to that. I just blocked Reddit. Have you ever been on Reddit? It used to be good, then it's gone downhill.
Which
I know
one? It's like
yeah, there are a million, and it's
10,000.
right now what the kids were going to was bad. It was bad, and I was so that is locked up. But if that changes and over time, and they need that, then I'll open it up again. And I absolutely love this stuff. And I have to tell you, I think I'm here. I have to tell you that I was teaching a digital portfolio class, and I had all kids working on different things. So I sat down and I had them all there, and I was able to see exactly what they were doing, and I sent them all a personal message. And then after class, they came up to me and said, that was awesome. You weren't in our face. We could do what we were doing, but then you reminded us what we were doing. So I thought that was fun. It's really nice to have a personal connection with each kid when you can. Oh, the funding. So we're splitting this with Chichester. They're doing the same thing. And the bulk of our budget for this will come from a software that we didn't renew last year because it wasn't being used. So that's how we're going to fund it. And this is a video that talks way better than I can about the whole thing from a teacher's perspective and from a student's perspective. So I'm going to play this, and then I'm done.
It's just a great classroom management tool. So I use it to make sure that kids, when they're working on their Chromebooks, are on task or not, kind of on different things. So the screen's turned in all different kinds of ways. You can't see everybody all at once. Kids are really good at knowing that exact moment that you're not looking at their screen. And this way I'm always looking at their screen. I use it to redirect if I want them to research a topic. And they're having a hard time finding a good source because there's so many bad sources out there. I can go find it for them, open out universally on all of their Chromebooks, and now they have access to it and continue their work knowing that they have valuable tools in front of them. I use it for just about everything you can think of as normal classroom management, especially in a Chromebook style classroom.
Just for that year, say teacher uses the Guardian, and she shuts down those types of stuff. It makes the students more focused just for that year, but throughout the rest of their academic career, their mindset, like even if a teacher doesn't have Go Guardian in the later years, their mindset, it can already be one to sort of make room to know, like, all right, it's a school, you need to work, you need to study and pass. It can help throughout the rest of their life.
I have seen better percentages of on task and successful academics, I guess is the word I'm looking for, since we implemented it. So their overall habits are better. They know that just because this is a class where they're always going to be using their Chromebooks doesn't mean that this is a class where they get to play on their Chromebooks.
The teacher implements Go Guardian, they have more confidence in the technology, and then they can have more confidence in themselves, and that proliferates into all aspects of their teaching. Just interactions with the students, to just whiteboard lessons, to technology lessons.
The Guardian is such a simple tool. I mean, there's only so many buttons you can click to say, oh, hit the red X to close out of that tab, or click the student's name to see all the tabs that they have open. So I think it kind of helps them just get more comfortable knowing that even though they might not necessarily understand how the technology works, they can understand how the Guardian works, and it'll help them keep their students on task and keep their students where they're supposed to be, so they're getting the most out of their education.
Just don't even question it. It's a game changer. It really is a game changer. I can't stress that enough. I got hold of it, and he said just try it out, and it was like immediate, like the possibilities of this are endless, and with the way that the user interface and the features that you guys are implementing are continuing to be rolled out, it's only getting better, and I'm just really excited about the future and where it's kind of going with this and how that'll continue to impact my classroom.
I really found that, it's definitely a classroom management tool, but it's also really helpful with just teaching and making sure that kids are right with you when you're teaching that. So I found it fabulous. And that is my presentation. So questions, let me X out here. Yeah.
I guess I'm a little bit, not torn isn't the right word, but I guess I'd be concerned. So the flip side of this, just I guess to be the devil's advocate here, is that what you and maybe this, I'm thinking more of this from maybe a high school mindset rather than a middle school mindset. But to some extent, you're removing the executive functioning practice that these kids are getting. Like, if they take their class period and they're messing around with whatever, they don't get it done, you're sort of removing that learning process, I think, of what if they're not actually getting work done.
I think that is more of a high school thing, but I've also really seen them, and they've said this to me, I know my teacher is watching what I'm doing, so I'm more apt to stay focused on what I'm doing at that moment. And so I think they are learning that there's a time for them to be in the class, and they can still go through all their tabs, and they've got Google Docs open, they've got research sites open, they've got Wikipedia open all at the same time. So they still have the freedom to go many places just as long as it's on task. And I've seen, instead of what we saw when we first opened it up was pretty horrifying, and immediately it stopped. And the kids were saying, yeah, this is okay. This is, I didn't want them to feel like we're Big Brother and we're shutting down stuff. But we are shutting down things that
we are Big Brother, we're shutting down stuff.
You're overlaying a structure.
Yeah.
Is this a software as a service, or is this locally hosted?
This is a web-based.
So all of our data is headed off-site to these.
I'm not sure. Ooh, that's a really good question. I don't think all of our data is out there, because it's, an app that we actually put into our, Google admin. So it's quite protected from what we are doing with it. And that would be more of a Bob thing that he could answer better, but I feel, I don't think our information is going out there.
Right. I mean, we're already in a Google Classroom
Yeah.
to a degree.
Yep,
We're trusting Google to host
right,
a lot of information.
and so that's how the
Just thinking
connection's
about
there.
what other information this would have,
But I don't think
It's not student data.
but
just
it's
searching.
browsing history.
Well, but the browsing history is, that, there's nothing sensitive, I mean, we're blocking where they shouldn't be in the first place. And so, I mean, that browsing history,
without it, since we're going through Google anyways, they're, the,
not an IT guy by any means, but.
yeah, neither am I. Well, no.
It sounds,
That browsing history is probably available anyways. Right.
Actually, I'm trying to think,
we
their history
didn't,
is really blocked from us.
we don't store the history.
Right, we do not store the history.
Because we
Once
can't.
they- Right, that once they log off, their history is.
So I would want to make sure
Their
that
history's
this software did not keep a ghost copy
Right,
of browsing history.
yes, and I'll look into that, Tim, but I, just from the way that they have, formatted all of their student privacy information, I think that's one of their foremost things to keep it private.
And are you using this across all of our devices currently, or are you playing with testing it on, in a limited
Just,
capacity?
we're testing it on all the Chromebooks. We have a whole bunch of teachers testing it with us.
Okay.
So it's on every Chromebook right now. It's the only way we could actually set it up.
And then how many teachers are functioning with it?
I think the whole middle school, and then fifth grade, and then, I think that's it. Is third grade? Oh, third grade's doing it too, yeah. I've had Matt take a look at that, and Sherry Nelson take a look at that, yeah.
And then one of the other things you mentioned is that we're offsetting the cost of this with the discontinuing software that we're
Right.
utilizing. What is the approximate cost?
The approximate cost is $7,000, but we're splitting that with Chichester, so we have to work out specifics on how we're actually gonna be working with
And
that.
is that
annually or?
That's annually.
Is that on top of the 7,000 on top of what we're saving by not renewing the subscriptions, or is it $7,000 what we're offsetting with $4,000 worth of non-renewed subscriptions, or?
Yeah, it brings us, so Chichester does a third of that seven, and I have my numbers a little bit.
So that's 5, so we have about 5.
Yeah, and it might be around 5,
4,600.
and the cost of the software that we went to is almost right there. I think it was around 35 for.
Okay, so this isn't
So-
a by no means just a mammoth outlay at all. I mean,
Right.
This is a,
Right, and, and they gave us quite deep discounts on it too, so, because we're a small school, we're doing it with Chichester. So they really tried to work with us to get a good price with that, so that was good.
It sounds like it could be really useful.
And, yeah, and the teachers have really, I've gotten equal, the teacher's job is easier and they can get to teaching. And the kids just are seeming to like it, which I was a little shocked with, because I thought, you don't mind us being in interacting? No, that's fine. That's, as long as we know that you're doing it, it's fun. And like I said, I'm open to, I'll open up videos for them if they want them, if they're appropriate, pass the book filter.
Yeah, I would have, if you could just clarify
Yeah,
that there's no ghost
yeah,
record of
Yeah,
search,
absolutely.
that would be great.
absolutely.
But cool, sounds like a nice tool for teachers, because everybody's screen is on them.
Yep, they really are, and that's, they are that digital natives, that divide between doing something specific on technology opens up, all the social media that they do, they wanna be constantly in that.
They can press Alt-Tab really fast.
Yes, they certainly can, and so this really helps bring that back down. And it also gives me like, oh, they need more education on this, they need more education on this technology, and I love that, it's really meeting them, I hate this saying, it's really meeting them where they're at, but it is, so I like to see where they're at.
Excellent.
Alright.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Alright,
Thank you
if
very
any questions, email me, I'm happy to answer, and I will try to find that ghost copy, which I think is mine. I'm gonna have a ghost copy.
It's not cool. Executive board report, we haven't had it.
That's right, we have a meeting next week.
Next week. Principals report.
Alright. So this goes from, February 7th to today. So it's not that long. We had our 100-day celebrations, actually on February 7th. All kinds of fun things going on in the school. Kids had a great day. Our basketball team, our girls team, won for the third year in a row. They had a 3-peat championship. We had a student, I'm sure you've heard, Ava, who got 1,000th point at this game. It was very special. Our 4th grade classes had their biography kickoff. I'm sure you saw pictures on Facebook. We had Sean White here. Yeah, he was here. And I can't remember the, Lindsay the skier, and Greg Gobert was the guy that climbed the ant, or I don't know. And Mr. Flagg was here. I didn't even know who he was. But the kids learned a lot, I think. It was exciting. Our artist in residence knocked our socks off, Saul Mensa. He was wonderful. If you got a chance to come to the performance, or if your kids talked about it, it was fabulous. We had our heart challenge right before February vacation, where K-4 kids did their jump rope for heart, and our 5 through 8 kids did whoops for heart. I don't know the total yet of how much was raised. I'll have that for you the next time we're together. Because February vacation. I attended a NELMS conference. It was my first NELMS conference. It was just on, it was a scheduling conference to take a look at different ways that you can create schedules, flexible scheduling, that type of thing. I attended with a few staff members, Heidi Cook King, Elizabeth McGovern, Candy Gavitt.
Could you elaborate the heck out of that? Up here, like what did you learn?
Pages of notes.
Because that sounds really, really exciting.
Yeah, it was exciting, and I think that we kind of walked away with more of a thought that we might not be able to do too much going into next year. There are a few things that we'd like to tweak and consider, but that we would definitely like to get a committee together to take a look at what kind of a schedule would work best in a K-8 school, specifically for middle school. We talked about the characteristics of successful middle school schedules, providing teachers with flexible potential to meet the needs of the kids, really keeping student-centered instruction, like building your schedule around students first, then the teachers, and then the rest of whatever the needs were. Talked a lot about common planning time, how purposeful it was. The presenter had, he had a couple different kinds of schedules that he had created over the years. We actually had 2 presenters. One of them was a principal of a middle school in Massachusetts, and the other presenter was a superintendent in Massachusetts, in a Massachusetts school district. And so they just talked about what components of your current schedule do you have that you want to hold on to and why. So the team that I was with, we talked a lot about more and more. We talked about revisiting what advisory is, what it means to our school, what kinds of things, how can we make it more solid. We talked about the MAG program, how solid that is, and I certainly wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, even if I was here for 45,000 years, because it's so the way they have it structured is just good stuff for 8th graders, but there is a way that we can improve the advisory program for 6th grade and 7th grade. Just in terms of even providing planning time for the advisors to get together, just to plan out that right now it's an email situation where, hey, can anybody meet on Monday? We got to plan what we're going to do on Wednesday, Friday with the kids, and So, we did have a lot of time to think about what's really working and what kinds of things we need to make better for our kids. We looked at schedules with a 6-day rotation, we looked at schedules with an A-B schedule, A-day, B-day, A-day, B-day, A-day, B-day, all the way through. So it was very interesting, it really was. Talked about, and in the afternoon, the team that I was with, Candy, Heidi, Elizabeth from Governor Lisa McConnell came as well. We really talked about what kinds of things we need to consider. Do we want to extend homeroom time in the morning and make homeroom time more of a advisory time, looking at lunch and recess. So
Did it come up anywhere about more focused with art and music and phys ed, like more focused on the kids' interests? Where
Or like an elective?
yeah, like there's I really love drawing, and so there's like a little drawing section, or I really love being part of the band ensemble, and so I have this. Would that kind of thing come up at all? Or?
But you're talking more about content rather than structural.
Well, I don't know. I've talked. Yeah. Rabbit hole. I'm not going down it.
Yeah. It's certainly something that we can consider when we're talking about what do we want to schedule to.
Right.
You see the timeline for this being making a committee and essentially taking next year to envision or consider possibilities for the following year, where maybe there would be a substantive change, perhaps?
Definitely putting in just some changes for next year, but really taking a look at the schedule as a whole and what can we do, and making some pretty deep changes for the following year.
Okay.
I know it's such a slow process, isn't it? It's like molasses, but it's like making a chicken salad sandwich at food bowl. So I love him. I hope he watches. I hope he does.
He's a sandwich artist.
Yeah, it really is. It was an amazing sandwich. Was that good enough? Was that good enough? I'm happy to share my notes with you if you'd like.
Yeah.
And then and today we had our PD Wednesday. We talked about the emergency operation plan. We touched upon what the teacher roles are during an emergency operation or evacuation. We also talked about what the incident command is and how important that is, that it's not, if we have to evacuate this building for an emergency purpose, there is a structure in place. It's not you just decide what you're going to do and take your kids somewhere, but there is somebody in charge and you will be following those commands. So we did touch upon that. Mr. Grieve had a great idea that in May, we're going to try to take a staff field trip on a PD Wednesday and go over to the George B. White building, as well as either Deerfield Community Church or Town Hall, take a look at inside the building and where the kids would go if we did have to evacuate in an emergency situation. Where would the tables be set up? Well, how would the unification look like in these buildings? I think it's important. What Mr. Grieve said that is in the past, kids have loaded the bus, gone to the location, got off the bus, stood in the parking lot, got back on the bus, and back to school.
Yeah.
And teachers never really got a chance to go inside, look and see where would my kids be, where would we put parents, how would it look? So we are looking into doing that in early May before we do the actual evacuation with the kids.
That's great. Do you guys have a key to the old town hall?
I don't know.
It is regularly locked. You might want to ask the town for a key so that you could get the kids in the building.
There will be
it would
fire
be an
chief is going to
emergency,
be here,
yeah.
right? Exactly. Yeah.
But
Kick the door down if you have to. It's historic, but just
exactly.
yeah.
Fine.
But you guys could probably give this school this key.
We just call Mark the chief, call whoever replaced him, they give us the key.
Okay.
We just don't have to.
So that was today's PD day, and to follow along with the emergency operation, I do have the plan here. I'm gonna get signatures from you at the end of the evening. It's ready to go. We're gonna be doing a tabletop discussion next Friday, Patty will be here, the police chief will be here, the fire chief, everybody in town. We got a couple of mucks from Department of Ed or the Homeland Security that are gonna be here. And in essence, what the tabletop discussion is just laying out a situation. In this case, we're talking about a bomb threat and going through the process from like who's going to be the incident commander until the next person gets here to take over for incident command. What kinds of things do we need? Who's going to be calling Dale to get buses? Who's going to be, and we're just going to go through as if it were a real emergency and talk about what we have in place, what needs to be tweaked, how, who's going to be in charge of getting the unification organized, everything. So that will be next Friday, and then we have another one coming up in April as well. We have a Read Across America happening this week for the entire month of March. We kicked it off this week though. We've had some fabulous guest readers. Mr. Oxford was here today. On Monday, we will be having a visit from the Department of Education. They'll be coming to do a facility review, walk around with Mike and or I, just checking out the facility. So that's coming up. That was originally scheduled in December, but it's scheduled for Monday. We have our PD day planned for Monday the 18th, middle school for kids. We're going to have a social emotional focus. Somebody coming in to talk about mindfulness and its practices in the classroom, its benefits, that type of thing. And then they have some talk about habits of learning and connecting all that together. We're going to have a documentary film complete with popcorn. In the afternoon, the documentary is called The Kids We Lose. I'd be happy to send you the link so you can see. It was done by Ross Green, who wrote, who's written a couple of books, Lost at School, The Explosive Child. So we're going to have, that will be in the afternoon. I'll send you the schedule, so if you're around, you want to pop in. And then we have the middle school conference coming up for NELMS. There's a big team going. Brian Grieve is leading the charge on that. They're going to be gone March 21st and 22nd, that Thursday and Friday. The team will be meeting next week to talk about a problem of practice that will guide them for the workshop. The agenda's coming up for the workshop schedule, so they're going to sit down and think about what direction I'm going in, what workshops do we need to take, as well as have their plan in place for sharing out the ideas that they can bring back from the NELMS workshop. And then curriculum night's coming up next Wednesday, March 13th. It will be our K1 and 2, and that's going to be from 5 to 6:30. The following week on March 19th, we are going to be doing grades 3, 4, and 5. Our fourth graders will be hosting their biography night that night, and then our third graders and our fifth graders will be doing the regular curriculum night. We decided to separate the two because between parking and the in and out of people and the large crowd, we felt it would be best just to separate the evenings. And then our middle school has planned their curriculum night for in May. May 7th is going to be the date for that. And we met last week not last week because that was vacation. I did not make them come in last week. The week before to talk about what middle school wanted curriculum night to look like. And after discussions, they came around with the idea of doing curriculum night more like a curriculum fair. So the kids will have artifacts that they have collected over the course of the year for the curriculum night, but as well, in addition to that, highlighting all the awesome things that are happening at the middle school. So having IXL set up, community math like a seventh grader, and having the robotics team set something up for what they are working on, having different stations set up around the gym as well as the curriculum night. So they're very excited. They've been using the entire month of March to plan out how they want that to look and roll out, and so that's exciting.
Did you have a date for that one or not yet?
May 7th will be
May
middle
7th.
school.
And what was the time for the third grade one? I'm sorry,
Third at 5 to 6:30.
And May 7th, you said was the other one?
May 7th for 6 to 8.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure that around that time as well. They haven't confirmed the time for sure.
Okay.
Fourth grade that night is going to, I don't know, is it fourth grade, but they're going to be doing something a little.
I'm fourth grade.
Good point. Okay, so you're gonna present the biography.
Yes.
They're
It's on
gonna do
Krista
their
McCall.
time from 6:30 to 8, I think. They're just tweaking their time just a little bit, cause they have a whole special thing planned out, so. That's it.
Excellent.
We had enrollment update on here as well. Did you have, or was that, we're not ready for that yet?
I'll work on that while you're, sorry.
So I would like to take a moment to recognize Leslie Witham, who is at her last board meeting, and to thank her for all of the help that she helped provided over the last couple of months, and for stepping in and filling Shelley's shoes and helping out on the committee for space needs, and we hope that you continue to remain hanging out with us. And I'm sorry that you're not running, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, and it's been an amazing experience. Thank you. And good luck to those running
Thank you.
for re-election. And I'll support you guys however you need to move forward. And the school, as always, transparent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yes.
I had a question before we move on from the NELMS update also.
Yes.
And it came back to one of the board goals at the end there. We sort of touched on this idea of a 3-year plan or something. Do you feel like that's at all reasonable? It was our goal, not the school's goal, I understand that, but do you feel like there's with this work you've been doing this year, do you feel like it's possible that we'll get to some point where you could realistically say that over the next 3 years we can, hit some benchmarks or something where we'll have some sort of a point that we're reaching for execution, or we'll know that we're there? I don't even really know what I'm trying to say.
Are you ever there?
Yeah. So.
I think about like even parent-teacher conferences, moving them more towards student-led conferences, having a time dedicated to that next year, twice, once in the fall and once in the springtime. I think a lot of things were put in place going into this year, not a lot, but some things were put in place going into even this year with the recess and the lunchtime suggestions that they had made, and all the work that we will continue to do on understanding competency-based and defining competency-based education in middle school. I think it's very reasonable to come up with a 3-year plan, especially towards the end of this year, evaluate all the work that we've done and what do we need to do, what are some next steps for next year and the year after, scheduling being one of a big one that we would like to work on.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Curriculum Review Board.
We didn't meet.
All right. Policies.
Yes. We've had this.
We need to do the policies.
Let's just kick them
Are
one.
they
It
printed out?
should be simple. So ADB, the Drug and Alcohol-Free Workplace, what you had me do at the last meeting that we talked about this was we took out the yellow language that had mention of syringes, and we took out all the black and kept the red, and the red was really the sample policy. So
I'll move to approve as written.
Second.
Any discussion on ADB? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
You can vote, yeah.
Throw a couple in just for fun.
ABC.
We basically took the entire sample policy. We had some pretty outdated language in ours, so we updated a lot of the new, like e-cigarette and liquid nicotine stuff is added in. So we adopted those changes as you requested.
So I would move to approve ABC.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
GBEDD, first reading.
That one is not ready. I did a draft and sent that off for Dean to review, but I don't have it for you tonight, so we'll put it on the next agenda. Carry forward.
JLCE, also known as EDDC, First Aid and Emergency Medical Care.
Yes. So what you requested at the last meeting was that we take out the Narcan language, and then you had made a little edit to the second sentence, and then we kept the red language, which was the sample policy language.
So I'll move JLCE, also known as EBBC, as written.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are through our policies.
Great, thank you.
Okay, informational items, we have a couple of things here. We have Nate's high school discussion, discussion about website maintenance, and a discussion about LED survey. What order do you guys want to go in?
Take the low-hanging fruit first.
LED.
LED, okay. You guys should all have in front of you an estimate from Evo Industries to do a 2-day audit of the energy consumption and usage inside the school for all of our fluorescent and other lighting fixtures. Basically what they would do is they'd come in, go through, total up what we have, do some figuring to determine what an LED conversion would save us on an annual or monthly basis in energy costs, and then also provide us with a sample scope of work that if we decided to proceed further with the project, we would have a scope of work to use to put out to bid to the world, basically, to come bid on the project. That, I think, is actually the most useful part of the equation, is having a detailed scope of work post-audit here, so we know exactly what we're looking at. It's a $2,000 cost, which I think is remarkably reasonable. They would be here a couple of days and work with Mike and figure it out and give us back the information we need to really decide if it's worth pursuing or not.
I would entertain a motion to approve $2,000 for an LED survey.
So moved.
Second. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Website maintenance. So we did budget next year for the designer of the website, Notch, to provide maintenance for the website. We had not put any money aside for this year for maintenance of the website, so there are a number of things that are not being maintained simply because of the amount of work it takes to constantly update a website. It is a different job. So Upper Notch has offered a cost of $150 a month to keep our website right up to date for us.
So this is basically a service contract.
This is a service contract.
So do you want to move just a...
So there are how many more months in this year? 4. But
We got to play
it's
with
basically through the summer you might want to have updates too. So yeah, but it's the next fiscal
July
year.
1st is
So
the new
July,
budget.
so we have 4 more months in this fiscal year, and if there's any tune-up, so
$1,000.
want to just say 1,000, and she can draw off that.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Move $1,000 for website, up to $1,000 for website maintenance to Upper Notch.
Is there an end date on that?
Be July 1, because
Be
it's
July
when the
1.
budget starts. Important. June 30th, sorry.
Just to make sure Brooke will not lose her editing, like her.
No, this is to like maintain and to do some of the stuff that's just falling through in terms of like. No, she has full control.
Yeah.
She's just not going to be like, oh, the calendar doesn't have this date on it. So I think what she's planning on doing. Did you get this?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, yeah. So she'll like take everything out of the bridge and put it into the calendar. Make sure that the copy of the bridge is up there. Add imagery if you need her to. She's not going to step on anybody's toes. It's going to be just.
She's not that type of person.
No, it's going to be. Let me make sure this is supported.
Going forward, after the end of this year, we had talked about making it a budgetary item for the municipal bid every year.
No, because it was $2,000.
It's not
put it in the
much money. It's not
budget.
nearly enough money to trigger a bid.
It
Okay,
was.
that's, I guess,
Well,
We have a $5,000 rate.
Yeah, you're well under.
So. All right, so we have a motion. Did we have a second?
Yeah.
We did.
I made the motion.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second it again.
All right.
Third, that's a third.
Second. All right, any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A second?
Second.
All right, high school. Mr. Oxnard.
So we brought up, or I brought up, the fact that we had been contacted by Co-Brown. I think we've each been contacted by Co-Brown over the numerous times, and so and they had expressed interest in just reconnecting after a break of several years, obviously due to the Concord contract. I thought it was interesting, since we're going into this, and this is what I had said at the previous meeting, that going into this, the contract discussion, which is going to be happening over the next couple of years, I want to collect as much information as possible. So I went, Jen came with me, we went to meet with Co-Brown, met with the headmaster, met with a school board member, not a school board, but a board of trustees. Toured the campus, had some conversation about answered various questions back and forth. Did not really just got into how the school works, got into budgetary items, things like that, and I thought it was an informational night and got a feel for the school. I don't know if there's really anything else to add specifically about that, but.
I mean, touch on the budgetary thing, that it was pretty clear that there is no room for a discount at Co-Brown.
Right. In terms of if we were to entertain them as a school of record, then there would be no discount. It would be whatever the going rate is, which is what they were saying they're offering to all of the other towns as well.
Yeah.
That number is, do you recall?
I think it's 16.7, somewhere in that range.
Versus we're about 13.
We're at 12.6.
On the budget, cheaper budget.
I don't have it, but I know.
I think it's close to a $4,000 difference.
Is it really? Because we're 12.6 plus the facility.
Plus 400. So it's like 13 for Concord, and it's over 16 for.
What's a $3,000-ish? $3
or 4, yeah.
It would add up to an awfully large sum of money.
Yeah, and I think as we move forward, having discussions, that is something that the town is going to have to be aware of. If they want us to consider changing options, there is going to be costs associated. I can't think of a way that there wouldn't be increased costs associated.
I mean, even if it was less busing, because it's closer, that's not going to offset that cost.
Not to that extent. Right. I mean, 200 students at $4,000 a pop is another 800.
Right.
Okay. Right. It's a, what, 8% hit to the budget?
Yeah.
7% hit to the budget?
And that's only, I mean, Co-Brown is one of many schools.
Right. But I'm just saying that's more than $1 per thousand on your tax bill.
But that's also assuming that the ratio stays the same.
Co-Brown will go up. Concord will go up too.
They will all go up. It's just, you know, to what extent. That's actually, I mean, in all fairness, that number from Co-Brown isn't any less than isn't any more than what we were paying Concord for a number of years before we renegotiated. I say we, collectively, I was not, but before the board renegotiated with Concord.
So the second thing is we went to Concord on Monday night.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that it was nice to see another board and how it ran. I'm trying to match them here. They had their entire board meeting was an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The structure of their board is very different than ours. They have 9 members, and they were all there. The way they arranged their meetings is that their monthly board meeting is kind of the culmination of the reports from the subcommittees, and they have multiple subcommittees. So there's a policies and procedures subcommittee, there's a communications subcommittee. There were 4 or 5 others that meet on a regular basis, where I think the majority of the work is done with a 2 to 3 board member quorum. Well, a minimum of 3. There are usually 4 members per subcommittee, and then those are presented to the board as a whole. So we don't have a 9-member board, so we run a different model. But definitely something to think about in terms of structure going forward for maybe some more subcommittees, so we don't get into our 4-hour marathons regularly. Patty's not going to feel bad about that.
One of the ideas that came up from that actually is that they had some of the Concord students, I think they were both seniors maybe, there were 2 representatives on the, there were student students that were from the school on the board. They were there. I don't know if they weren't voting or anything like that, but they were
They're
there.
there regularly.
They would go regularly, but they were presenting essentially while we were there at this meeting. They presented a report of recent events at the at the high school. So it was a way for the board to have a student perspective as to what's going on in the school on a regular basis. And we talked to the superintendent.
Right, after the meeting, we had a discussion with both the board chair and the superintendent, and the superintendent said she would ask Tom Sicko, who's the principal of Concord, if there is a Deerfield student who is in the same group that it kind of lobbies to present this, and that she would be in touch with you in regards to having the possibility of a Deerfield high school student, because the presentation, I think they collectively work on the presentation, and then these two students presented. And every month we could have a Deerfield high school student there talking about what's going on in high school, which I think would be fantastic.
Great to start bringing some of that feedback back home.
Yeah.
You know.
And the only other item that I had regarding high school is that it kind of touched on the idea of the parent forums. I mean, it would also be great with that similar idea, not just presented to us, but could we have some high school students come back and have a parent forum, or have maybe once or twice a year, maybe more often. I don't know how often we could convince the high school students to do that, but could they come back and tell, not just us, but the community, parents and younger siblings about what's going on at the high school, and so that it being our school of record, I feel like we have very little contact or information coming from them as to what's happening there. Once our 8th graders leave, they sort of disappear, but to have more of a connection and more information coming back would be maybe a way to fill out some of our parent forums that we like to do, but also a way to get information back from Concord to the parents who are wanting it.
I think that would be a great idea to have a panel, not just one, but maybe a couple come back late fall or about that time, or particularly in the seventh grade year, because that's when people start thinking about that. And the pressure starts to build for the students of what's it going to be, where am I going to go? So I think that could dispel a lot of that anxiety. Also you get that information in front of the parents of the younger students who already have preconceived ideas about where they are going to send their kids and what's going to happen then. It doesn't work out that way. So
I think something else that, again, this is board goal. This is board related, but we have a contract that's quickly coming up to the end of its lifespan. I mean, we're only a couple years, 3 years away from.
There are 2 more classes before. I think that not this next year's class. So the 1920 class would be the last class that we would have full 4-year contract with Concord.
Potentially.
23, 24.
Yeah.
So and maybe this is something, Patty, you can help put together, but again, this direction, what are we going to do with high school, say, in 5 years, right? Or, because that's basically the first part of the conversation. Can we pull, maybe, or is it possible to get like the Cliff Notes pulled out of the contract of, this is when it expires, this is when we'd have to, these contract negotiations, obviously, this is when we really need to start looking at contract decisions if we're going full term on this contract, and so that we can tangibly start seeing these dates, because these are going to occur regardless of whether or not we've really pushed into it. And then we as the board need to say, okay, when do we start these conversations with the community to say, what do you want us to do as your representatives? Do you want us to continue the course? Do you want us to open the contract? Do you want us to renegotiate this? We need to, because that has to happen before we start hitting all these deadlines on the other end.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reality is that is pulling together a number of costs. So kind of there's the model of where we, and I'm not advocating this at all, but where Deerfield used to be, where everyone basically went where they applied, and there's basically no discounts at all. because schools aren't gonna give you a discount if they don't have a guaranteed number of how many kids are gonna show up. And the economic impact of that would be significant.
You could very easily take a worst case scenario and say, our most expensive local option is $20,000 a year. We send 200 kids to at $20,000 a year.
We're $1.5 million over.
Here's an extreme on one end of it, here's an extreme on another end of it.
Okay.
We need to start doing that.
Yeah.
So maybe if we can at least abridge that stuff out of the contract.
And have it, just put it on the agenda for next time.
One quick question about the Concord meeting. That was just related to the high school itself, correct?
It was the Concord School Board meeting, which is the board that manages 6 schools, I think.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Was it just about high school, or was it for,
Yeah,
It was
they
the
had-
entire district.
they
They
had-
actually had 3 new administrators there. Runlet has a new principal. Abbott Downing has a new principal, and their K through 2, I can't remember.
Broken Crown?
Broken Ground has a new principal.
Anthony.
And and they all talked about what they did on their 100th. Well, a couple of them talked about what they did on their 100th day. And one principal, which I thought was fun, she said she did 100 calls to students whose parents she'd never talked to. That is a lot of calls.
It's ambitious.
So she had the teachers pick the students that are never a problem, and she had them write a note or 2 about each one of the kids, and she called the parents and just said,
That's
"Hey,
awesome.
I'm the principal, and I wanted you to know that your kid is doing great doing this."
And that's why I never have to talk to you.
Yeah. It was a
That's
kind
awesome.
of a neat idea. The Anthony talked about how he has every Friday they have like a dance party when they leave at dismissal.
On the way out the door.
On the way out the door, they have a full-on dance party. They play music over the PA system. So, some interesting things going on in
I
Concord.
prefer to start my Mondays that way.
Monday mornings.
Yeah.
Take it away, Kristen.
If you're gonna do it, start it that way, don't end it that way.
They did talk briefly about demographics, and they had just completed a demographic study as well. The numbers that they had plugged in for us, assuming we were going to continue there, were not necessarily correct. So I was able to talk to them a little bit about that and say, we're not going to be shrinking. It doesn't look like we're going to be shrinking. So they had budgeted, they had thought we were going to become a smaller school as they are becoming a smaller district. So, any other questions about the school? Oh, they have a couple of national merit scholars that were there.
Finalists. Yeah.
Finalists for Concord. 3 of them, which is a big deal. All right. Public comments?
I have questions, and I know if
You can ask us to answer questions,
Right.
and we might entertain it.
if you know the answer or would like to answer them. Who made up the subcommittee for the, like, was it like parents? Did they get volunteers, or was it like teachers? I know you said the subcommittees at Concord School Board.
It's school board members.
So the 9 of them broke off and worked on it.
So there are 9 of them, and each one of the subcommittees is 4 people, and they need a minimum of 3 to run the committee.
Cool. And then my other question, a couple of them, do we get a discount because we send a percentage of our students there? So we get a discount from what they would charge out-of-town people, or what they charge their own students?
We pay the same amount that
Concord
it
pays
costs
that.
for their students. Almost every other situation where
It's like
kids are being tuitioned in, there's premium added.
Is that close to what Co-Brown's price is? The premium of Concord? Do you know?
It really depends on the individual school, but I would say 16,000 is probably pretty standard. I do know that Pinkerton is less expensive, only because there are 4,000 students there. I think
It's a college.
yeah, that
That's the one in Derry?
the college.
huge.
scale of cost is different.
I think Manchester's is probably, I think Manchester was less as well. I'm not, but
I think Bow is surprisingly less expensive. I think when we budgeted for Bow,
it's,
I don't think they were less than Concord, but they were less than others.
yeah, they weren't in the 16 to 17,000.
That might be changing though with the power station reappraisal.
Oh, right, because that's what offsets their costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one more thing that was just a suggestion. I know.
Yes.
It's still a shorter meeting tonight. You guys should have, now that we have student council here, and I know these meetings are late and run late, so maybe they couldn't come, but you should have them do reports that could be right here too, because student council this year is doing good things already. And not that any of them are my kids or anything, I just know because I've seen them, and if you ask them, they're little workers.
The three young ladies that stood up at the candidates night were members of the student council, correct? That was impressive. That was very
And I asked them
impressive.
to come, and they actually stayed all day because they thought they were gonna set up, but other adults had set up for them too, so I felt bad about that, but they're little workers and they'll do it, and they'll let you know what's going on here for the students.
I did invite one of them, two of them actually, to come to board meetings, and I would love if student council came. I think that'd be fantastic. They could see how much fun public government is.
self-governance, it's lovely.
Would we outline their responsibilities, or are we just, what are we asking? What are we?
They could come and do a kind of a what's going on in the middle school, do a brief presentation of what's going on in the middle school.
And then they can excuse themselves when they need to? Or?
Yeah, and we'd put them right up front, and if they wanted to ask a couple of questions, I'm sure the board would be open to answering a couple of questions.
And they can bring information back to the student senate or the school body.
That'd be great.
Do we need to take a vote on that? Or
Would you
is
like
that
to invite them? Officially? There we go.
we can't give them a vote though.
Not till 9 o'clock.
Right.
Just for an update, there is no enrollment change for us. Holding strong at 541.
All right.
Okay. And,
That
so
does not include,
the second question is, do we have a kindergarten number yet? Because that's always our wild card. That is the wild card every year.
We don't have that number until
Late.
August.
Do we know what we have? Of that
No matter
541,
how hard
how
we
many
reach
were
out.
in kindergarten currently?
60 are kindergarten.
Is what you're projecting right now?
We have 15, we have 4 kindergartens and they're all 15.
That's what we have now.
That's what you're projecting now
Yes.
for next year.
For next year,
First
yes.
grade.
The first, no, I guess I was asking.
No idea.
Because our transition is always, if we send 40 away from 8th grade, and then 60 show up and boom, we're up 20 again.
No, we have.
And that's what we've seen the last
We
couple
have
of years.
22 or 23 4-year-olds. I think there's 8 or so kids at the co-op.
So that's the mystery. as
And
always.
kindergarten registration is happening now.
In 8th grade this year, is it?
But
You also
8th grade's big this year.
Is 8th grade big this year?
This is a 58 or 62 kid class.
Okay,
It's
so
a
we,
big class, isn't it?
The 57.
oh,
They're down to 57.
okay.
We were at 60 something when we
The
started.
good, I guess the good side of that is that's still a fairly large class, so if we're shifting out, say, year 60 and bringing in year 60, we're gonna net.
Now
No, that
the other side is the current 7th grade is, I think, the
40
smallest
grade.
grade.
40 grade.
So that's where we potentially could see another big bump, is when we shift them off to Concord, or off to
After
Concord.
next year.
If another 60 kindergarten show up, we're plus 20 again.
But there's a 5th grade or 4th grade class going into 5th grade with 72 kids.
Yes, it's my daughter's class. Yeah, a billion of them.
Yes. Well, 7 close to building.
Yeah. You all.
72.
So that, we don't get into that crew will.
Well, there's that, but you also don't know migration in.
100%.
For the kindergarten, so any number that we can pull together right now,
That class is
we
7.
have the unknown.
That
So
class
we're
is 72
digressing a
started
little
at
bit too much here.
50.
Are there any other public comments? Okay. So, we should go into non-public as per NHRSA 91-A32C. I would entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Second.
Nate?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
At 7:45, we're going into non-public. This is a record. We're doing it. We are out of non-public at 8:35, and
Move to seal the minutes in non-public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to approve unpaid day off.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.